Hello and welcome to our very first Q&A session with Justin Pringle, Managing Director of Prototype Projects. In this session, we're going to talk about finishing options for 3D printed prototype parts, as this is something we often get asked about. So, hello, Justin.
Good morning.
Okay, let's jump straight in. At Prototype Projects, we offer 5 3D printing technologies.
Yes, that's SLA, SLS, FDM, Polyjet, and DLP.
Okay, can you talk us through the finishing options for each of those?
Yes, so with the SLA process and the DLP process, they are resin-based, very similar. So we class those as having the same sort of finishing options. So we take parts that come off the machine and we can apply various processes to finish the part as per the customer's requirements. This can be anything from straight off the machine, where we just remove the supports. We can leave the witness marks that are left, or we can just sand them down and then send those parts out. Or we can take it a bit further down the line, where we can sand back the build lines, as we call them, where the parts have like layer lines, smooth those off to give you a smoother surface. We can lacquer parts to give them, if they've been painted, a gloss effect, or if it's a clear part, adding lacquer will just enhance the clarity of the part. And then we can go a bit further down the finishing, where we can be adding color, gloss, matte, or satin finishes to make the part represent a production intent part.
Okay, and what about SLA medical devices that have been made with Cura Clearview?
Yes, so with the medical devices, we run what we call our Medi process. Those parts are essentially all done in a separate room. The parts are printed, they're washed off, so any residue resin from the print is removed. They're then dried for a period of 24 hours, and then they're bagged in a sealed bag before they leave our special room. We don't do any further post-processing on the parts. So that means that we're just following our strict guidelines for the medical parts to adhere to a USP Class 6 classification. Parts can be processed outside of that, but that's down to the customer's requirements of what they're willing to do themselves or for us for their needs.
Okay, and what about SLS?
SLS, a little bit more limited to the finishing options than you have with SLA or the DLP processes, and that's purely down to the fact that SLS parts are stronger, they have a rougher surface, and they will require a lot more hand finishing to give you any smooth surfaces or glossing painting. So generally they would just have what we call a smoothing process, in terms of the surface of the part has its slight roughness texture taken away, or we can dye parts using a German dimension coloring system, and we have various colors available to do for those. The surface texture of the SLS parts is slightly porous, so to give it a better sealing, we can apply a lacquer to seal that surface. There are other surface finishing technologies, commonly known as vapor smoothing. We don't do those in-house. The geometry can be affected by the chemical attack on the surface, so the geometry specification can alter slightly, but it is a process we can offer by subcontracting that out.
Okay, and so is FDM similar to SLS?
FDM, or filament printing, it's using a plastic, so rubbing down a plastic part is quite complicated, hard, and takes a long time, and you do get very distinct layer line builds with an FDM process. So generally you wouldn't do any finishing of the part afterwards, because it's very time consuming, and you will be changing the geometry to get the features. And there are better processes to use, such as SLA or DLP printing, if you want a cosmetic model. But again, you can vapor smooth these, but the chemical process will change the geometry of the part. So FDM generally off the machine, remove the support and send the part out.
And how about the final 3D printing process, Polyjet?
So Polyjet process, generally you would take the parts off the machine, remove the support and leave it at that. Although sometimes if you want a clear part and you want it lacquered up, you can polish them. They do polish up very nicely, but generally you would just use it as an engineering model and send it out as it is. We could add in inserts to the part, but as I said, generally you would just send it out off the machine without any really post-processing. With our finishing menu, which is available on the website, so that gives customers a clear understanding of what our finishing codes are, what the finish they'll get, and which process it applies to.
Yeah, okay, thank you, that's been really helpful. So we've talked about finishing options. What about inspections? So
generally with 3D printing, speed is of the essence. The CAD model is the CAD model. It gets sent to the 3D printer, and provided your printers are set up correctly, been calibrated, you've done all your test pieces, which we do regularly, the part will be to specification of the printer. So you will be doing visual inspections to make sure all the features are there. You can do overall dimension checkings, but we wouldn't necessarily do a full inspection of the part unless the client has specifically requested that. Generally, it's visual inspection and send out the door.
Yeah, okay. And then finally, can you just talk through the assembly options for 3D printed parts?
Yes, so again, depending on the client's requirements, we can take a part, add parts to it, bearings, bushes, inserts, bought-in components, some PCBs that the customer might already have made somewhere else. We can assemble those, screw the part together. So we can do that final assembly if the client wishes.
Lovely. Okay, thank you. So to everyone who's been watching, we hope that you found this a useful video. Look out for more coming over the next sort of couple of weeks and months. In the meantime, if we can be of any help for your next prototype project, please do get in touch with us. Thank you.
Goodbye.